getting movies made is hard, but the means of making movies have become easier in some ways. Getting movies seen and distributed well in theaters, that's really hard.
Welcome to Third and Fairfax, the official podcast of the Writers Guild of America West. I'm your host, Brian Gary. In our latest episode, Jasmyne Peck speaks with screenwriter and director Bill Condon about bringing Kiss of the Spider-Woman to the screen, the creative challenges of adapting Broadway musicals to feature films, finding your own authentic voice, and as always, much more. Listen and subscribe to Third and Fairfax on Spotify, Apple, or Libsyn, and watch us on the Writers Guild of America West's YouTube channel. And now, here's Jazz in conversation with Bill.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Third and Fairfax, where we tell you what's fair and factual about what's going on in the industry right now. I'm so stoked to be here today with the pin behind Dreamgirls and Chicago and the latest entry to the Hollywood canon with a very old Hollywood energy, Kiss of the Spider-Woman, which is in theaters on October 10th. Bill Condon, welcome. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm happy to be here, Jazz. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. How long have you been a WGA member?
Oh man, since I wrote Strange Invaders and sold Strange Invaders to Orion, which is 1982. So that's a while, right? 43 years, 44 years almost, right?
That's a good minute. How does it feel? How did it feel when you got your card in the mail?
Oh, the best. It was it was extraordinary. Just, it felt, it was something I'd aspired to for so long. Even though I was young, it was something I'd thought about, since high school. And the validation of it's a feeling that never goes away, I haven't lived in LA for like 10 years, but I was on the strike committee, not the recent one, but the one before. And that was one of the most extraordinary experiences of my life too. And getting to know writers in that intimate way. I think that's the time that I spent, the most time in a room with fellow writers. And it was thrilling.
Yeah, I have friends to this day that I met like out on the picket line. I'm seeing one today, seeing tomorrow.
Right.
It's a different kind of bond for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, no question.
Yeah. Your career includes movies like Dreamgirls and Chicago, which are movies that I watched on repeat like as a child.
Right.
So I would just love to know, like, what's a piece of advice that you wish you had received when you first started writing?
Oh, wow. It took me, I never thought of myself as, I didn't know anybody, right? And I moved to Los Angeles. I moved to Los Angeles right out of college to set up residency for 2 years. If you had a California address, you could go to UCLA Film School, and it would only cost like $500. And that was really my only way in. And it was a strange moment. I moved out during I didn't know how to drive, and I moved out during a bus strike. So literally knew nobody. Yeah. So I was always like looking for, how am I going to do this? And I didn't trust myself enough to, how do I put this? It's like the way in that I saw with something that I loved, but I wouldn't call exactly personal, was horror movies, because in a strange way that they were a sliver of independent film at that time. Halloween, like it was an earthquake. Halloween was made for $300,000, right? And I think I've always, to this day, I'll tell probably later the story of writing Spider-Woman on spec, the way I wrote Gods and Monsters on spec. But when you do that, I think you have to always be aware of, like, how much money will I ever get to actually make this movie if it gets made, and how will I get it made? I think that's part of what keeps you company while you're taking that leap, right? And then it was, there was a niche that opened, and I loved horror. I loved Hitchcock, and I loved horror. So how is this turning into advice? I don't know exactly, but it was, I think the advice is, it took me too long to go personal. I think it took me. There came a point when, I did a sequel to Candyman. I directed that, right, and I'd done other stuff that was kind of more in horror and genre. Although I'd been able to make a few cable movies, which were more dramatic and had more going. But I reached this point of like, God, this isn't really what I wanted. It was, in other words, you can get on the train and you can be a working writer. And I lost sight of why I wanted to be a writer a little bit, because I was busy and I was happy about that for a while. And then I wasn't, So that's what happened to me with Gods and Monsters. It was like, I'm not going to write anything. I'm not going to be paid for anything. I had saved enough money. I didn't live extravagantly, that it was like, I'm going to sit this out until I can figure out how to get this movie made, wrote it, kind of optioned the novel it was based on, wrote it. And it was, 18 months, 2 years until we pulled the financing together. So that, I think, advice is take the bigger bet on yourself as soon as you can, I think.
That's fantastic advice. I think there's a bunch of other like morsels in there too. Like always follow your star. And be patient, but not like reticent or stagnant in the work that you're doing.
Yeah.
And the third piece, which is a great transition to the next question, is be strategic, because you mentioned that Kiss of the Spider Woman on spec is very specific strategy.
Yeah.
And I would love for you to talk a little bit more about like why you made that decision and how you oriented your pitch around that project also.
Yeah, there was no pitch. That's the thing. It was just like, well, here's the thing. It was, there are a lot of reasons why I wanted to make this movie. It was the novel. I loved the novel, and I felt as though each of the versions that had come before, both on stage and on screen, had been groundbreaking, but none of them really caught up to what Puig was writing about, especially when it comes to gender fluidity. 49 years ago, so it felt like it hadn't really been told as a love story, which is what it was. It had been a more transactional story and things like that. I also thought, I knew it would be it's always been a hard movie, a hard story to tell on stage. It won lots of Tony Awards, but it's never been revived. It's always been a bit of a kind of it's a cult musical, and I think I knew, and let me just say, and it's turned into a unicorn movie. You can't really put it in any box, and so I knew it had to be done. How can I put this? I'll just say it. I didn't want notes. I didn't want, and it was the same on Gods and Monsters. It's like it meant too much. I was putting a lot of myself, especially almost as a kind of career defense into the mouth of Molina, my feelings about what movies are and what they can be and genre and stuff like that, and it didn't, I just knew the first, if somebody's paying you, that they are paying you for the right to weigh in, and I didn't want that. It's as simple as that. I didn't think I could make the movie that it needed to be if I did it in that way.
Right, and because of the subject matter of the movie also and what it's saying, and I have a couple of questions about that also.
Yeah.
But the machinations of the industry aren't always kind to the themes that are like running through and coursing through this film.
No, I agree. Yeah. And what's interesting about, and I forgot this, because I did, it is a bookend to Gods and Monsters. It's unbelievably similar, spec, get it made independently, take it to Sundance, come out of Sundance without distribution. Then finally someone loves it and picks it up, but what you forget about getting a movie made, and it's man, I think of all the friends I have who are so brilliant, who, are faced with this struggle all the time, as I continue to be. It's like getting movies made is hard, but the means of making movies have become easier in some ways. Getting movies seen and distributed well in theaters, that's really hard, and we could talk about like Ted Hope. I don't know if everyone knows his incredible Substack thing, but he's trying to invent a new way for independent movies to get to an audience because he thinks it's so broken, but I just realized, at a certain point when it was done and I loved it so much, it's like, oh my God, we have to go kind of pitch this movie again,
Yeah.
and it's going to be no easier. In other words, the whole group of people I didn't go to the first time now get to say, no, most of them do, so the machinations still apply, it's just, you've got your movie at least,
Right. And people can see and be impacted by it on all
Right.
of the levels that it's hitting.
Yeah.
That's very true. Because you mentioned it earlier, I think like one of the most beautiful things about the film is the arcs of growth between the main characters, and
Yeah.
there's two major ones. There's the love story, which
Right.
is so refreshing to see between these two characters, and then complementary or sort of consequently, there's a growth in each other's
That's
political
right.
consciousness.
Right.
And how did you go about creating milestones for each of
Mm.
those journeys?
Well, it's the essence of the novel, and one of the great things, and it's so surprising and it just makes me laugh, and I think it makes people laugh, is, Melina is the queer, window dresser, and he's right wing, as much as he's, I wouldn't even say that he's
No,
unaware politically,
Yes,
he doesn't, he's not right wing, but some of his values are pretty retrograde, he thinks women belong in the house, and he thinks men should be strong and make you a little afraid, and, which I love. I love the fact, that it's breaking that mold, and but it is about these two characters, one of whom, Valentine, the political activist, really doesn't believe in the world of the imagination. He's so engaged by, from a young age, growing up in poverty, being politicized, you might say radicalized. He's devoted his life to action and trying to change things in the world. So for him, he has no time for art and the imagination or anything like that. He's an intellectual. And by the way, that's one of the things, I know I'm veering off a little, but I did feel like this is one of the ways in which other versions hadn't lived up to the novel, because he is, sometimes that can get reduced to like a macho guy as compared to an effeminate guy. But it reminded me of, being in college in the 70s, and, I was at Columbia, and there were straight professors who were political and more out in front with gay rights than I was as a 17-year-old. You know what I mean? And so I just thought that was an important thing, that he had those values. But yeah, they both grow toward each other. Melina kind of acknowledges that the reason he's abstracted himself into the world of the imagination and movies and things like that is that he doesn't have a place in the world. The world basically rejects him, and he's never felt valued. And he earns a sense of his own worth in this time he spends with this very, very different person, and that makes him want to do something. There's an exchange I really love as Melina has finished telling the story of the movie that he loves, which I'll talk about, but I kind of devised that movie, but at the end, Valentine said, he died for a cause. He's like me. And Melina says, no, he died for love, and the fact is that when Melina does finally sacrifice himself, he's moved to a certain degree into the world, and it's a political act, but it is also for love, and Valentine, in a way that really reflects movements of the time had consciously rejected the idea of love because love is dangerous in the movement. That means you're putting something else first before the change that you want to make, and discovers that decides that that's too big a sacrifice, and he does allow himself to love. So the journey toward each other, I think, is the essence. It's why I think, why do people keep coming back to The Wizard of Oz? I'm not saying this is that, but it is a story that keeps kind of revealing meaning. Sometimes writers just have a great idea, and I think putting these two guys in a cell together was just a great idea that continues to reveal itself.
Yeah, the taking them out of the context of themselves, individuals, and viewing them as representatives of what is
Yeah.
transpiring societally, like
Yes.
how to get people to be active participants in creating the space that isn't there
Yes.
in the world around them.
It's the essence of what we need to do. I keep I made a movie about Kinsey, the sex researcher, and spent 18 months really, really living in his brain and in his research and things like that. And the famous thing is the Kinsey scale and all that stuff. But the real thing, the perception is that there are 8 billion human sexualities, that we each have a fingerprint, we each have a sexuality, that he didn't think, again, he died in the 50s, so before he could see the impact of, he understood the political value of Mattachine society and a gay movement and things like that, but he didn't think it represented progress or liberation, because he said he thought the only liberation was moving beyond a label, right?
Mm-hmm.
And again, that's always been a struggle. Labels are important because they connect you to a group that it becomes public and affects change, But man, I always thought the power of the story was just you strip everything else away, and there's a certain point in which life gets reduced to the elemental. You're shitting your pants, and someone's got to help you. Someone's going to help you clean that up. And the intimacy that happens there, if you allow it to happen and open yourself to it, makes you forget everything every expectation you brought into it. To me, it's like that thing of, when you fall in love with somebody and you start to kiss them, and it's like it's like, oh, this is not the face I'm used to. This face that's very close looks like a different person. You know what I mean? How
Right.
someone starts to evolve even physically based on, and so, for example, I don't think you can call Molina trans. I think you maybe can call him proto-trans, because he didn't really have obviously there had been Christine Jorgensen and things like that, but in his own life, he didn't think, saying he wants to be a woman had an aspect of camp to it, I mean, it was outrageous, I don't think he, and so much of trans is the journey towards self-identification, that he didn't have the tools for, the means for, or, but when he does say, this is a line from Puig, next he'll say, all you need is a good woman, to which I say, I agree. And that's why I want to be one, and that's rejected so out of hand by Valentine as being, again, he's analytical, he's reading up on homosexuality, and he's got all these theories about it, which the novel, by the way, it's hilarious. There are all these footnotes of various theories about, but he thinks that's just an example of something that's kind of been kind of imposed on Molina, because Molina hasn't been given a sense that you can be homosexual and male at the same time. But during the course of the movie, he sees the complete picture of the person, and that includes the person who would prefer to be a woman.
Mhm.
So again, those things are complicated, you know. But I think it's I don't know. It's all rich, I think, you know.
Extremely, extremely. I think like the what you talk about and touch on about like drifting away from the stringent reality and confining nature sometimes of what society has told us it is
Yeah.
and it's possible. There's such a fine line between like finding places with which and people with whom we can align and confining ourselves societally from reaching towards further goals and progress and open
Yep.
possibility.
Yep.
Um, yeah, I you mentioned the two worlds that exist in this film. One
Yeah.
is very like grounded and like a sort of almost indie film world, and then there's the spectacle of the old Hollywood world. Um, how did you go about keeping the stories cohesive? Wow.
Yeah, I know. That was the big challenge because you're interrupting one with the other all the time. I
Right.
think, you know, it was interesting because I think the secret is, and I don't think it's obvious, is that the two actually inform each other more than you'd imagine, you know, so that the prison world, right? Um, it's interesting. We've been taking the movie around. We brought it down to Palm Springs, right? And there was a benefit for the Palm Springs Museum, and that's a very specific audience. It's very gay, older, not exclusively gay, but a lot of older people who, you know, were in show business and, you know, stuff like that. And it was like the greatest, like, reaction to like the laugh lines, you know, joking about Danny Kaye being gay or Sid Charisse, you know, things that, you know, sort of other audiences go like that too, you know. But it had the rhythm of a kind of traditional two character play. You know, it's written. The movie is written. The dialogue is written. It is not a true slice of life prison drama like the great, you know, prison Prophet, for example. You know what I mean? It's like it isn't that. It actually has its own stylization, you know. And I think and I think that I suspect, you know, just starting to get a sense, there are people who are like, oh, that's a little too written for me, you know. And I found, you know, it's the same with Gods and Monsters. I love the tradition of Joe Mankiewicz. I like written movies. I like acted movies. You know what I mean? You know, that thing that everything is just meant to be like hyper real. So I think people see it as like, oh, you put this hyper real thing against this hyper stylized thing, but actually there's real stylization in the prison. You know,
Right.
I wouldn't say there's reality in the movie. You know, that's not the case. But one thing there that is invented in this movie, there'd never been a single movie that Molina narrated called Kiss of the Spider Woman, you know.
Mm.
But I think to your question, how to make them cohere and not feel like interruptions, I slowly, sort of, you know, with all the cards on the wall, built a movie musical that had beats that would kind of reflect on what was happening between these two people in the cell. And specifically, Molina and Aurora, the star of that movie, sharing a problem, which
Mm-hmm.
is they don't know how to love or be loved, right? And in the Hollywood movie, it's a very lurid curse, you know, that she got because she was born on the night that the Spider Woman wanted to kill someone, you know, and stuff like that. But you're actually working through the same issue in these very, very different forms, you know. So I think that's how they kind of, you know, I think that's why they mesh, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a question that sort of scratches at that a little bit, but I'll ask it
Yeah,
different first.
yeah,
Uh, because you talk about studiously, I think, and with such a deep respect for the novel by Manuel Puig, who was
Yeah.
affected by the tumultuous political environment in
Yeah.
Argentina at the time.
Yeah.
And I know that the Kiss of the Spider Woman has had like iterations that touch more on the Brazilian side, which also
Yeah.
experienced that. And then the stage adaptation by Candor and Ebb with the book by Terrence McNally.
Yes.
So when you're adapting a project and striking the balance between like preservation and originality, how did you go about that? And did this project differ from other adaptations that you've done?
Yeah. Yes. But it's interesting too, because I have been involved with things that have their own lives before, and you realize there's something good about it. It's a version of IP. This is the world we live in now. But also, everyone comes with, or many people come with expectations, or it's sort of like, oh, you didn't do that, you didn't, and all that stuff. To be specific here, the novel was my kind of guiding star. I didn't really refer to the Babenco movie, much as I like it, but that felt like it was its own thing. As you say, it reflected a certain moment in Brazil, all that stuff. And with Terrence's blessing, I didn't really base it too much on the libretto of the show either, because that show is it's Candor's opera. There's so much beautiful music in it, but there's not a ton of real estate for what happens between the two guys. So yeah, it was really the novel and then inventing something new with it. The thing, obviously, politically, I started this, in 22 midterms, maybe a little before, but you knew that trans people were already being demonized, so that was part of what made it feel urgent, and it is depressing to see how much more urgent it's become since I started that. We filmed it like right in the middle of, I guess, when May of 2020. So it was, before Biden dropped out, but it was, it was the election season was really heating up. So you're aware, and with that came a lot of, anti-trans stuff, inevitably, so anyway, but, being true to Argentina at the time, tanks on the street, I never saw, and military and rifles, I never saw that coming. I didn't. Here we are.
Here we are. It's really interesting the way that history sort of repeats itself in different environments, and the similarities are always very like evident in retrospect.
Yeah.
But I digress. To talk about a highlight of the project, and something that I was so just delighted to learn when I went to the screening at the DGA, that John Kander, who is an iconic and prolific composer of this project and Cabaret in Chicago, was a part of the production. Can you talk about
absolutely, yes,
with him? And
oh my God, it was so great. He, famously the nicest, kindest, most open heart of anyone you'd ever meet, but tough. It was he's and completely, sharp, and so it was an incredible collaboration. First of all, to hear from him what he meant when he wrote,
right.
a certain thing. But I'll give you an example of something where we were on different pages. On it was there's a song called "She's a Woman," that in the movie, Tonatiuh sings as Kendall, who is his character in the movie within the movie, in Kiss of the Spider Woman, who is a closeted gay man who's looking at his sort of ideal female, played by Jennifer Lopez, Aurora. and it's right there in the lyrics. And I wish that she were me, right?
Right.
But
Yeah.
but in the show, it's not that. It's Molina hearing Valentine talk about the woman he's in love with, Marta,
Mm.
and he wishes he were Marta. He wishes he were that person that Valentine was in love with. So it had a different meaning. So as we came to, and there wasn't a change of lyric or anything, but as we came to record it and work with Tonatiuh, I think we were the yearning was of a different kind, and there was and I'm not sure. I can't say that I ever convinced John that all I convinced John of, because he is such a generous artist, is okay, that's what you're telling. I respect that. Go do it. I'm not sure. I don't prefer him pining after Valentine here as opposed to after the woman he might be.
Yeah. I mean, that's so interesting because I think that was one of my favorite
Mm,
moments in the film. And Tennessee so amazing,
right.
as is Jennifer. Just like cast. And I have questions about how you made all of that come together in a bit, but the I don't think that what you guys were talking about was necessarily oppositional. Actually, I think
No, you're right.
totally made both of those things
Yes.
very apparent, but also kept it focused on Melina's trajectory and internal desire in a way that like gave credence to the affection and the pining for
Yeah.
Valentine, but didn't make him the center of the
Exactly.
desire.
Exactly. Right.
Um,
And it also comes at a point in the movie before he does love him. He
yeah,
isn't there yet. So yeah. But you're right. I mean, it's still yes, it's part of it. Yeah.
yeah.
It's
Go ahead.
no. I was just saying it's waking. Things are being awakened. So it is like a little building block of that too. You're right. It's not that is happening too. Yeah.
Yeah. And the songs are just like such a vehicle for progression in the story.
Hmm.
Like in the balance that you strike between what we learn through song and what we learn through dialogue is like so delicate. I think like
Hmm.
some of the scenes that are just like the Valentina and Melina just speaking to each other and caring for each other are so beautiful and don't
Mm.
um the songs are not needed there necessarily as a means
Right.
of like drawing the closeness between those characters, and then when the songs hit they're just so delicious.
Mm.
And so how did you go about choosing what to include and
Mhm.
what to omit in the craft of
Yeah.
the tale?
Yeah. Well, it's first of all, there's in the show there are tunes sung by the in that case Cheetah Rivera, that character, which are performance numbers, but also you've got prisoners lining up singing about big busted women over the wall, and stuff like that, singing prisoners and singing people in cells, and I just didn't want to do that. I wanted to have the balance between the two. So unfortunately, that just sent a lot of wonderful songs, as with the cabaret adaptation that Bob Fosse did, a huge, beautiful score, half of which, didn't fit into that conception. The same thing here. There was one song day after that we shot because it's a really wonderful political anthem, and it comes in it's interesting when you talk about the dialogue, and there's kind of this unwritten rule in musicals that a number should happen every 8 or 10 minutes. You know what I mean? It's like, um, and I kind of follow that rule, except for this big chunk when finally it's like, no, Molina says to Valentine, no, I'm tired of hearing myself talk. I want you to talk. And Valentine tells this devastating story about a political rally that became violent, right?
Mhm.
And that whole thing and a few events that follow, that's like it's a 15-18 minute chunk without a song, right? But originally as designed, Melina was going to be listening to it and projecting what Valentine was saying onto the somewhat politically active character he played in the movie, Armando, right? And so where he gets all the townspeople worked up with this song day after that. And it was a lovely scene and Diego did it beautifully, but it was one of those things where the movie just tells you something when you put it together. And it just felt like it trivialized, we were getting very close to the heart of what's going on between these two. And it was the one example of looking at it and thinking, no, that just cuts something too important, and I resent being there, So that was the one I really struggled with and hoped I could make work, but I couldn't.
Yeah. It's for the DVD extras. That's why.
Exactly. That's right. That's right. It's so
So
true.
it's okay.
If
Well,
such a thing still exists,
it does. I
it does.
literally just bought a DVD because I needed to watch something for another one of these,
Good.
and I
Good.
wanted to be able to just like do it
Yes.
on and take
Mhm.
notes. So there's extras. It's possible.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, you wrote Aurora, the Spider Woman, with an actor in mind.
Yes.
The one and only Jennifer Lopez, which
Yes.
shout out to the Bronx icon all day long.
Right. Exactly. Mm-hmm.
And what is the creative fuel that comes from writing with a specific actor's present and talent in mind? And how do you navigate the risk if the dream casting doesn't work out?
Well, that's the thing, right? You're putting this big bet on the fact, and I didn't have a number two. Could you name the number two? I can't. I don't know who the next choice is. That specific thing. Her brilliance as an actor, but also she has in herself the essence of the diva, and she's leading a diva's life. When we auditioned, we had open auditions around the world, and so many people, and it was one scene about we would always be the first scene about him talking about Kiss of the Spider Woman and Aurora, and so many people. She hadn't been announced. Maybe she'd been announced, but still, so many. Because I did want queer actors and Latina actors, right? And so many of them already had their picture of Jennifer that they put on the wall, when they were auditioning. So, yeah, it was unthinkable, I remember, this is a little beside the point, but I just was always, I would show the movie. I live in New York, but I have like a drop down screen, in my living room. And I'd show the movie, do my own little test screenings every weekend. We had the movie together very quickly, and you bring people over. And I remember showing for the first time this scene where there are two Jennifers. The Spider Woman and Aurora are acting with each other in the jungle scene.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my friends said, "Oh my God, gay heads around the world are going to explode," because it was like, so there's something about that too. She's very, in addition to everything else, she understands a gay sensibility. Do you know what I mean? Again, it's not camp. There's just a kind of
there's a way of being. There's a like a physical, but also like diva specific embodiment of personhood that Jennifer is able to do.
Yes.
Yeah. It's just, yeah, I can't. And I'll talk about JLo for hours.
Exactly. Yeah.
And what she does in this film, and what all of the actors do, Tony Tiu, Diego.
Yeah, Diego.
They're pulling a really like magnificent and like unique double duty, and I would argue for Jennifer pulling more than that, because Aurora and the Spider Woman are like manifestations of Melina's psyche in so many ways, and vice versa for Tonatiuh, and the way that they are like interacting in those scenes with each other.
Mm-hmm.
when you're writing roles to be played by the same actors, how do you go about crafting characters that resonate on multiple levels for them?
Yeah, well, I got to say, you hired the right actor to start with. Honestly, I don't think you can really ascribe all that to the writing.
Right.
It was, and Jennifer, that she was day one. She's like, Aurora is who he wants to be, and she also is the summation of everything, every kind of challenge he faces. But also, watching both Tonatiu and Diego kind of immerse themselves in the style films of the period and kind of capturing that style, and then um, um, the interesting thing becomes the way it gets kind of feathered into them as people. It's like art can change you. You know what I mean? Diego crying at the end in that cell, or Tona having a sense of beauty and grace as he's facing the end of losing Valentine, which is similar to hers. That I thought, I was just like watching these actors like do all that, and you think about it, but you think about it and I don't know, it doesn't really become front and center until you're working with a couple, handful of great actors who are really bringing it to life,
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's the beauty of like filmmaking in general, is that everything is bolstered by each other. So like the
Yeah,
script strengthens the talent,
exactly.
the
Yeah.
the concert, if you will, of filmmaking.
Hmm. Yep.
Um, and I think we touch on it quite a bit throughout, but the themes of the story is a respite and both a respite and a catalyst for change and the power of storytelling.
Yeah.
Um, and so many different intersections of the film's population, be that like trans people, Latine people, political dissidents, seem to
Yeah.
be in the crosshairs in today's
I
film.
know. I know.
And I was wondering if there was like an ideal action that this film would inspire in the viewer that you had in mind for when people go see it.
Yeah. It's an interesting. Yeah. I think it's only that thing, that basic Kinsey thing of like, see each other as individuals, and that's the way out of it. And finding it sounds so corny, but it's only through some kind of love, right? That we can like shed the things that I don't know. It's hard. It's hard. I hate to like simplify it to that. It's not that. It's just a feeling, right? I don't think you come out of movies. Um, I don't anything simple like that then undervalues the unbelievable difficulty of the moment.
Yeah.
It's not simple, right?
Yeah. It's there's this political concept, like I think forgive me if I get it slightly off kilter, but it's called El Corazón Popular, like the heart of the people.
Hmm.
um, and I think that what the characters do in the concept of the story is strengthen each other by opening their hearts to understand like what it means to have a heart for the people, and how caring for and loving your fellow man creates a space of safety and love for each other, but that's not without difficulty and that's not without action in the name of progress. So I think it is love, but it's
Yeah. Yeah.
also coming together to build that that's necessary, but that's only possible through loving each other and seeing each other.
Jazz, that was so beautifully put. Thank you for that. You really did get to the essence of it much better than I'm able. That's gorgeous. Yeah.
No, not at all. I couldn't have said it if you hadn't have made the movie. So
Uh,
it's and I think like I definitely That was my like main takeaway
Yeah.
in drama. And on the micro level, I also went and watched Cabaret after.
Oh, you did? Oh,
Yeah,
wow. Yeah.
yeah. Um,
Isn't that,
but
yeah, that is the gold standard, isn't it? That is, oh my God.
they're very complimentary films, I think, in terms of
Yeah.
people responding to the condition of what's transpiring around them and trying their best to um, uh, cope or navigate that. But I actually think that Kiss of the Spider Woman is uh, a more cohesive call to action per se, whereas
Yeah.
Cabaret is a view of the condition and the impact of the condition that people acquiesce and remove themselves from at the end, at least in terms of the main characters, because it ends on a much different note.
Yeah.
Um,
It's interesting because you're right about maybe the call to action part, because Cabaret of its very much a movie of its time, the 70s, so that ending is brutal, right?
yeah,
It's here come the Nazis and God knows what happens to her,
yeah,
and Chicago too, written in the
yeah,
70s, right? And at the end, yeah, murderesses go free and they have a tawdry showbiz life, here this show came out of that tradition and really was a completely brutal ending too. And I just felt it was one of the things that it didn't last, but there's a scene where Valentine's talking about musicals later on, and he's talking about, like all good musicals, it's a love story, and it did feel like I just couldn't leave it the way it had been left before, which is that all of this is kind of pointless, and so that's why I bumped up the time to 1983 when the junta finally fell. The military regime fell, and there was, this long siege was over. It just felt like, oh man, it felt like we'd been through something, and you kind of deserve that possibility. And right now I'm really glad I did.
yeah. I'm glad you did too. It's like Gramsci, the role of the artist. What is the role of the
Yeah,
artist? Our responsibility to the public, and I think like leaving people with hope and letting people know that that is possible. It's possible to change an ending, to shift an ending, and
yeah,
um not like trivialize all of the hardship that comes before it,
right,
but know that there's something that we can move towards is huge.
yeah.
Um,
I think
so
so.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a bunch of rapid fire questions for you to
Okay. Oh. Yeah.
over here. What is a top pitching tip that you would share with people?
Oh man. It's been a long time since I've pitched, I gotta say. Oh no, that's not true. No. Oh, I don't think of myself as being great at that. I guess for me, it's always been I never I never do it until I feel like I've answered all the basic questions. I think that's it. Like feeling confident that you've worked out what you want it to be. And sometimes that can take a very long time.
Yeah, that's a really good one. And if you get writer's block, which no pressure,
Yeah.
but if if you do, then what works every time when you're trying to get rid of it?
Oh man. I think the just reminder that all of those days of torture, during those days, writing is happening, because I think that's just been proven over and over again. And it's like, you know, being able to say, if you're feeling down, this will have an end. You know what I mean? There will be another side to this, and just embracing it, and and letting a day, 2 days, a week, 2 weeks of not producing, like giving that its own value. You know, as long as you're still there trying.
Yeah, like I went to a workshop earlier this year, and the person leading was like, even when you're not writing, you're in the process of writing. That's
Totally,
um,
absolutely. Yep.
and are there any unexpected places that you have found inspiration for a story or in a moment where you were stuck?
Always, always, always in the shower. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable how just being in water. Swimming pools, I don't have one anymore. I live in New York,
Oh yeah.
so it's got to be shower, But man, I find myself like heading toward the shower at some point, because things happen. It's strange. I don't know what it is, but
Something, the creative flow in
yeah,
action. It's like, okay, here's some
yeah,
droplets of idea
yeah, yeah,
inspiration.
yeah.
Um, okay, what is the worst note that you've ever received on a script?
Oh, it's all variations on the same thing, right? And it's all about the tyranny of likability, I think,
Yeah.
and that being the enemy of drama, in so many ways, I think it's that, it's just like the worst note on a cut is always, it's too long, which is the go-to, right? Could be
Yeah.
shorter, when I hear that, my heart sinks. It's like, and then, not that it's not true, but it's just such an easy,
Yeah, it's
thing.
like the thing that someone says when they have actually nothing to say. They're like,
A
well,
little bit.
yeah,
Yeah.
criminal. Um, and what is there a project that you're like dying to make? Like that is the golden goose of projects for
Um,
you.
yeah, there's maybe a couple, right? One of them um, is written, and I haven't been able to get it made. There are a couple of that are written and haven't been able to get them made, and you're always looking for that. Is this a moment to try again? Is this a moment to sneak it in? And you never know, right? But there are a few.
Yeah, they'll happen one day.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, or maybe someone else would do them. Who knows?
Who knows? Who knows?
Yeah, it is a big thing. I remember talking to Phil Alden Robinson about this, but boy, I know there are copyright issues and things like that, but man, I wish there was this way for everyone to share their three favorite unproduced things in a way that just let screenplays live as things that are
Yes.
valuable on their own. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%.
And especially in the world of letterbox and a dedicated culture of film lovers. I feel like, and how much of that has just happened organically. I just feel like that's something that could happen organically.
Yeah, I agree. I think like one of the things that drives me crazy about this business is this idea of like um too many eyes, too many internal eyes having seen something before it can be like brought to the public. Like if
Yeah,
you bring
yeah,
it to people and it's great, but it's the town has seen it, it's burned. That doesn't make any sense. Like if it's great, let's make it. I don't care
that's
how
right.
long
That's right.
it's
Yeah.
existed. But
The words I hate, the market has spoken. Oh my God. That,
okay, sure.
yeah,
The
right.
algorithm has put its final word down, and that's it.
Exactly. Yeah.
What is the has there ever been like a moment where you were under pressure and you had to change the script last minute and it stuck with you to this day?
No, not really. I'm a pretty good fighter.
Okay, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't think of anything that's just like, oh God, my thing on, because it's all the same, writing, directing, it's all that same thing. But there's always like an ideal cut where you realize this is the movie. And then from that point to release, the goal is only to lessen it by 2%. If you can, in the process of all those people sometimes having to, if you can just make it 98% and then also have your 100% version of it, then you've succeeded. But, and I do fight like, and I fought some pretty powerful people to make sure that, I've been able to do that.
I think that's an excellent note to wrap up on. Fight
Oh,
like
good.
don't give up.
Yeah.
Follow your North Star, and you will come out with a vision of something that you truly believe in and
Yeah.
feel very like happy and confident with. So
That's right. And that makes it easier to fight, I think. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
thank you so much, Bill. Such a
Thank you. This was the best conversation I've had about the movie. So I really appreciate it. Thank you.
listen. You want to talk about anything, anytime? I'm here.
Okay, good. That's cool.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Third and Fairfax. You can listen and subscribe to Third and Fairfax on Spotify, Apple, and Libsyn, and watch us on the Writers Guild of America West's YouTube channel. Also check out writtenby.com, the Guild's online publication, for more on writer craft, career, and union life. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.